Hey guys, it's Scott. Before this ramble gets going, I just wanted to apologize. What happened on the back of my mic here was that the cord was pulled out ever so slightly, and it caused a pretty heavy popping sound at times in the recording. I liked a lot of what I said enough that I wanted to keep it, and in the second half I did re-record those segments to not only better express things I wanted to say, but include a couple additional points, so the latter half doesn't have that popping. But as I said, I just wanted to give a quick apology to those of you out there, and especially headphone users. Sorry, guys. What I want to talk about next is another opinion piece. I want to talk about YouTubers on break, which is kind of a polite way to put it. Basically, I will be referring to 3 YouTubers, and I respect all 3 of them. I respect their wishes, and 2 of whom seem to want to move on from Warframe, but I'll be referring to all 3 of them. And what I want to talk about is not some of the drama that surrounds this. There does seem to be a movement on YouTube to talk about drama. I'll say right now what's playing in the background is simple sortie footage, as I'll just be talking about this topic, so feel free to just watch that or watch me. It's your choice. But yeah, I don't want to talk about the drama of these topics. I don't want to talk about, I don't want to be dramatic. What I want to talk about is how these things are handled by the YouTubers themselves, or how this affects the community, and expectations on the community, and what these things mean, and possibly give different insight on these things, and how they affect the game. Because, to me, that's what's important, is just how these things affect the game. That's why I want to make this show about how things affect the game. And so, I also do want to comment that I'm a guy who lives in pain. I talked about that on the first episode of State of the Frame, probably too much. I'll talk about that in the next segment a bit. I have pain in both of my legs, chronic pain. I live with it every day, and it has helped me to recognize kind of needless drama. I don't like drama. It's pointless. It causes stress for kind of needless reasons, and I kind of want to talk about why some of this drama was needless and probably not beneficial to even the YouTubers themselves. So, let's go ahead and get into it. So, Mogamu, one of likely the most popular Warframe YouTubers, and Baus Phoenix, one of the probably fastest rising popular Warframe YouTubers, both decide to quit Warframe. At first it seemed like they were, or at least Baus Phoenix was going to be on a break, but yeah, it definitely seems like both have just chosen to step away from the game. And this is for each to interpret on their own. I found that Baus was trying to move away for some time, or at least add additional content just outside of Warframe, and to each their own. You know, they can obviously do that. That is their choice. However, how they approach it, I do think, says a lot about how people interpret the message, and what that might say about the game. And Mogamu definitely was more, to me, dramatic about it. There was a good amount of time between... There started to be more time in between the videos he would post about the game, and then he decided that he had just had enough, and he needed a change, as the video said. Again, I do think there was some dramatic flair to it that was unnecessary. Now, the part I really want to talk about is how this is handled and how it's broached towards their subscriber base. In the next video for Mogamu, he kind of wanted to philosophize about the nature of gaming and why we game, and seemed to make passive comments, and this is, again, why this is my opinion, seem to make passive comments about why we game and that just collecting stuff isn't enough. And I honestly if I had his ear, I would tell him that is not for him to decide. It is for each person to decide on their own. I very much enjoy collecting things, and I would say from the player bases of Destiny and The Division and Warframe that people very much enjoy collecting things, and that thinking that there is one correct reasoning to that is not a good approach and not a good way to make a video. And I also think it's very unprofessional to talk about how many, or to point out how many subscribers you're losing. That's not a good approach, and he lost my subscribership because of that. I would have told him, but the comments on both of their videos just seem to be at war over who is there just for Warframe and who is there to support them, and I don't like those polarities. There needs to be a middle ground, and I would have loved to have said, look man, best of luck to you. I would have stayed to support your endeavor, Mogamu, but, you know, the way in which you're handling this does not seem like a clean break to me. It does not seem... It seems like you were in a long-term relationship and you are having trouble handling this breakup. And now I would say the same thing to Baust Phoenix, because at first he seemed to handle it well, but apparently he posted a video, I believe it was just last week, about how people are commenting about where is the Warframe content, and that he has uninstalled the game, and he seems to be unequivocally done. And again, this just does not... This comes across to me as dramatic. It comes across to me as a bit tone-deaf, and comes across as just not handling a breakup well. And what I mean by tone-deaf is this kind of lack of understanding of why your subscriber base is there. They're there watching you play this single game or talk about this single game, and then you choose to go off and talk about all these other things. It has a tone deafness to it where I feel like sticking with your tone would be, I am feeling tired of Warframe right now, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to cover a whole bunch of different games, but I'm also going to talk about this other game. It's kind of similar to Warframe, or maybe it's not, but it's a kind of game where you can put a lot of hours into. Because there is that divide where there are the players who do truly love to sink hours and hours and hours into games, and there are those that just love that brief burst of an experience. And I think that you need to know the tone of your subscriber base. Again, to each their own. If that's the kind of content one wants to put out, then that is why I'm choosing to separate from them, because I would just prefer a more professional demeanor. It is... honestly, if you created a YouTube channel, if you created a business around, and especially if you make comments about how you want to run your YouTube channel like a business, you do not run a business that makes pizzas. You don't have a business that makes pizzas, and you make pizzas for 3 to 5 years, and you open additional chains in 2 separate areas, and then immediately on the flip of a coin decide that, oh, we're done making pizzas. We're actually gonna be like a fast food joint. We're gonna serve, like fries and sandwiches, and then complain about how your customer base is reacting poorly. These guys have every right to do what they want with their YouTube channel. However, it comes across wrong when you talk about subs or viewers who want Warframe content, and those who are saying mean, lewd, rude, or derogatory things in the same breath. It lumps them together. there should be a clear separation. You just shouldn't be talking about them at the same time. If somebody is calling you a faggot for not doing Warframe content, well, then don't talk about, people asking about Warframe content and the rude people in the same breath. There are absolutely shitheads on the internet, and some of them even play Warframe, and that sucks. But the onus is on those of us who choose to step up, to put our faces in front of the camera, and we have to weather this BS. We won't always do our best. I will probably, mess up or get aggravated if somebody, wants to say dumb or mean shit to me, but you gotta do this. You just gotta brush it off. But we have to do our best to also make sure that we're not placing that on groups of people. It's not the Warframe players who are being mean to Mogamu or to Baus Phoenix. It's just people. It's not all Warframe players. Some of them, unfortunately, do play Warframes. They play all kinds of games. They do all kinds of things that are loved by many, but it's not just them. And you can't place that on groups, and you definitely can't place that blame on a game. And I can understand their reasoning for stepping away from the game, but I just feel like that. I feel like that the way in which they are giving that message is being misconstrued as reflecting on the game instead of, well, it is on them. And perhaps that's... And maybe that's what they want. And maybe that's the kind of YouTube channel they want. But that definitely became a problem. You saw that on forums. And there was an interpretation of a message to the community that their sudden leaving of the game reflected on the game itself. And there are things that obviously do reflect, as Headshot talks about in his video. There just isn't a ton of endgame. There isn't a ton of things where you get those Uber builds and you get to go and challenge those Uber builds, or that you have to concoct an Uber build to confront this challenge with. And it's... And maybe to some that is what it is, but not to me. And the many others who are still playing the game, continuing these experiences, to any YouTuber who is saying they're quitting X game, there are many who are just like, well, okay, that sucks, but this game's still great to me. And I think however you want to look at it, that professional communication would have really helped all involved with this. And especially in transitioning. Not, just not being tone deaf, transitioning to what you're doing. Guys, I'm going to start to taper off the Warframe content, and I'm going to, start doing these other things. There might have been less visceral reaction from the commenters. And talking to their subs and viewership in moving to different games. I can't help but think about Day 9. He's a Twitch streamer who archives his videos on YouTube, and I've followed him for like 5 years now, maybe more. And he started off as a StarCraft professional player. He literally won StarCraft championships in different tournaments, and he started a YouTube channel about helping players become better players. And he made his own content. It wasn't that the game dictated the content he would be making. He came up with creative ideas. But what's more about what he has done with his YouTube channel is that he transitioned his YouTube channel. He was doing StarCraft videos for the longest time, would also include other games here and there, mostly on Fridays, which he referred to as Day 9's Day Off. And then he got a job additionally, in addition to his career in streaming and on YouTube, and he does game design now. He's working on an RTS called, I forget what it's called. Whoops. And he transitioned to Hearthstone. The reason for which was because StarCraft took a lot of doing to make a show, and he still wanted to do shows, but he just felt like StarCraft was too much to continue to work on. And whether he subconsciously or consciously recognized it, he transitioned to a game that he continued to do. He wasn't tone deaf. He knew that his subscriber base was there for a singular game, and it happened to be a Blizzard game, and Hearthstone is another Blizzard game, and lo and behold, Day9 also does some Overwatch here and there. And it's... For me, I don't care about Hearthstone that much, but as a subscriber for a guy I really came to like, who didn't talk about, oh, I'm losing subscribers, oh, I'm getting hate for not talking about StarCraft, it was important to me. He had a very professional and charismatic demeanor, and he transitioned, and he transitioned well, and a lot of his subscribers stayed his subscribers and stayed cool people and were cool with him. And a huge part of that, in my opinion, was probably because he talked to them about it. He was very open and communicative, and he didn't just full stop, I'm stopping StarCraft, guys, I'm stopping it, stop it. No, he just realized that I need to do this for myself, and it's going to affect you guys, and I want to talk to you guys about it because it's obviously not just important to me, it's important to you. You are my subscriber base, and that's important, was basically how I interpreted it. And if I am to find any traction with this, if I am to become some kind of personality, I will model myself after Day9. I do not have his humor. He's just a phenomenal person. I wish I had his humor. I hope to have some kind of charisma. We'll see. Headshot was the one who brought up the idea of the lack of endgame content. He did so in a video, and it was a well-put video. It was a great conversation or a great analysis he made about the state of endgame content. Now, I will disagree with him that I do personally think that sortie content does still count as endgame content, even if it doesn't count as endgame content for all. I think that it does challenge those players who are coming into the high mid-game / early late game, and it challenges them. It challenges them to find those top-tier builds so that they can perform the sortie successfully and consistently. Yet he did this video, and he then also did a video that he has every intention to stay with and persist within the Warframe environment, that he loves the style of gameplay, and that the style of Warframe's gameplay is very hard to find, it's very hard to mimic, and I completely agree. And I think that is the proper way to address issues as YouTubers, if we want to address them. Bring it up, but make clear that this doesn't change the perspective that we have on wanting to play the game. If one wants to step away from the game, that is healthy. It is not healthy to have this idea in your head that this game, any game, should be one end-all, be-all, whether it is for creating YouTube content, or whether it's just to play endlessly forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. There are some people who can do that. There are players who go and play StarCraft, and that is just what they do. Players who play League or Dota, and that's just what they do. Players who play Minecraft, and that's just what they do. But it is truly healthy to step away and try other games, and come back, and have renewed perspective. It just seems kind of silly to think that you can just play one game endlessly and also make content off it continuously. And I'll say it, in the next Ramble, but I will say it right now. Stay of the Frame is going to be a seasonal show. I'm making another Warframe show that is going to be a seasonal show, because I recognize that I have a need to play other games. And when I come back to Warframe from those games, like I did recently, where I was playing a few other games between what I believe was March and June, and I came back to Warframe, and a lot of my builds were no longer sacred, where I couldn't disrupt it. I was experimenting again. I was playing with different weapons. I no longer required the most efficient weapon of the game to continue playing with. I could play with plenty of other weapons and form them and have a great time with them. Variety is the spice of Warframe's life, and you have to step away sometimes to come back and notice it and embrace it, at least in my mind. And heck, sometimes you just have to start completely fresh. Starting fresh on PC has been awesome. And experiencing the story again is a delight, because now I understand a lot more of what's going on. It's always hard to grasp what's going on entirely in a sci-fi piece, but it's been a lot of fun, and I just really want to emphasize that. The other thing I do want to point out about what Headshot said, and I'm sure he completely understands this point I'm about to make, and probably even agrees with it, is that this is likely close to the state of Warframe's gameplay. There's a good amount of early game. You play through Earth, you play through Venus, you play through Mercury, and I would say you start to hit the mid-game about what would be Ceres now, maybe Saturn. Jupiter or Saturn is where you really start to hit the mid-game. Basically, you start to understand and have a grasp of the mechanics within the game, the weapons, how to mod them, how to rank up your mods, and it becomes a process of playing through all of that mid-game content. Tons of mid-game content with tons of mods, tons of leveling those mods, collecting resources, collecting frames, collecting weapons, and just learning what you like and don't like. And finally, you do reach that small portion of endgame, and I do agree. It is there is a responsibility on DE to really start inputting more endgame content into the game, and I'll talk about that more in depth on the topic. But yeah, the veterans definitely do need more to challenge them. I do think it is hard, as a lot of the systems within the game are receiving updates so that it can continue to move forward. And I do think that, personally, I think that those systems are also going to continue to receive updates and become more endgame-like, more endless, return to those endless-style missions, because that's Warframe. That's what we know it as, that's what the developers know it as, and it just takes time. It takes time, and it takes data, and guess what? Data takes time to collect. So, let's get back to this graph I have here. The graph obviously shows that the endgame content is small and the mid-game content is massive, but what is really important about the graph is the gameplay loop. Now, every game's gameplay loop is different. When you're playing a game like Uncharted, you basically just move in a straight line. You move across the game, and that's it. You get to the end, and after the end, it's over. You can go back and play it again, but you start with that easy starting game content, and then you move through the mid-game content, and you get to the end content. Now, of course, we're having a lot more games, especially those coming to console like The Division and Destiny. We have a lot more games that are really starting to become more poignant or pronounced within the industry. Division, Destiny, games like WoW, kind of have had this method in mind where there is a cycle within which you play. You'll go to those endgame instances, like the raid, in most games, in, say, The Division, Destiny, WoW, Warframe, and then you'll go back to some of that mid-game content to do the other things in between the raid. In Warframe, that cycle is huge. Some have a really closed cycle. The cycle for Warframe's gameplay is huge, and a lot of it involves the mid-game. But the mid-game for Warframe just can really emphasize how fun just playing Warframe is. And I just feel like that sometimes that gets lost, especially when I might see a post on a forum. I don't frequent the forums, but when I do, I'll catch these every now and then, where there's someone who's like, I have basically, gotten top-tier builds and top-tier mods. What am I supposed... That was an interesting glitch in the video. What am I supposed to be doing, they might ask. And the answer is, play more of the game. Enjoy the game. And the other answer to that is, maybe go enjoy a different game. And then come back and experience the cycle with a new kind of perspective. And I really want to emphasize this, so I'm going to go into the large view and cut the sortie compilation that's in the back, just filler. So let's go ahead and transition. So let's go ahead and look at that graphic one more time. This one, with the gameplay, where the gameplay is basically at. So we've got this end game that's basically sorties, raids, high-level missions like the Dark Sectors or the high-level Void, where basically you really do have to have some skill to go far in those missions, especially the endless missions. You have to have some top-tier mods and some pretty darn decent builds, or super tanky frames. And then, of course, you have the mid-game, which to me really seems to be about level 25 to probably level 50 enemies. That's arguable, obviously, but a lot of those missions where you're fighting between Jupiter and up to probably Neptune I would really classify as mid-game, and then when you get to Pluto and Sedna, those are really where the end game is at right now. The Void, the Derelict, although the Derelict is, in my mind, probably mid-game. And, of course, you have the early game, which you can still return to and still reap a lot of great rewards, and those tile sets are still used. Some games just have this incredibly closed loop of gameplay, and that's really what I want to touch on, is that there is an advantage, even though Warframe feels like it just lacks this mid-game content or this end-game content. The mid-game content, the amount of it, I feel like is hugely an advantage in the game's favor. And if you're that kind of player who is looking for the challenge at the end game, go check something else out. There is no reason you can't return to the game later. In fact, I implore you, it is truly fun to return to a game and have more content to explore like Warframe. I did so in Destiny, but the reason I really stepped away from Destiny in favor of Warframe, and really in favor of it, was because of that, how small the Destiny loop was. I loved the raids, I liked the Nightfalls, but all of it just became so repetitious, and I truly would love to see a larger gameplay cycle from Destiny as well, where we get to go and do more in between those large instances like the raid, like Nightfalls. It's important it helps the game to thrive, because your players hunger for a lot to do. These are the kinds of games where people like myself, who unfortunately have a lot of time to themselves, or people who just want to spend their spare time in a game, these are the kinds of games we'll often turn to. And yeah, we want the content, even if a lot of it's at mid-game. Not everybody's going to agree with that. Some people just hunger for the challenge. And maybe Warframe's just not the game when you really get towards the end of everything there is to do, but I like just the style of it, the variety, and the play, and the developers. I like how much they communicate and how much they update their game. It's important to me, and I do think that gameplay cycle is awesome. And yeah, that's really a lot of what it comes down to in my mind, that recognizing the gameplay cycle, recognizing where it's at, can really help us as players. And it definitely helps the devs. I'm sure they're very aware that they need to improve upon the endgame content, and it sounds like there's some cool endgame content coming to us with the War Within already. They talked about in DevStream 80 how there's going to be this kind of VIP target that we're going to be hunting down for syndicates, and I'm excited to see what that's really going to offer us. So yeah, when it comes to YouTubers on break, don't let it affect your perspective on the game, and don't listen to those that want to say the game's dying, Destiny's dying, Warframe's dying, The Division's dying. It's those kinds of comments just lack any insight whatsoever. Yeah, of course, games will come and go, and those kinds of things will happen, but Warframe's plenty healthy right now, and it likely will continue to be. And I will talk more about kind of the state of where the balance of how the game is being updated. I'll talk about that a lot in the topic, and I'll talk about how the game will benefit from balancing this kind of update style. This year was very much a year of just kind of polishing and updating and renewing systems, and I do think that did hurt a bit, and we are seeing the hurt from that. We're seeing that hurt translate to YouTubers going away, but I do think that YouTubers also need to be healthy with how they approach the game. I think Headshot is being healthy. He's saying, I love the game and I want to keep playing the game and keep doing content for the game, but I am going to add other games and talk about other games. Rob from A Gay Guy Plays just started talking about that, where he's going to start looking at doing some other games as well, because that's the nature of being a content creator. You want to create content, and even while Warframe has a lot of content to cover, it is not the end-all be-all. Don't expect it to be. So, I'm Scott. Get out there, enjoy the game, and if you need a break, take a break. We're going to go ahead and transition into the State of the Frame schedule and my goal with State of the Frame. So I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. Stay tuned. Got more coming up.